Right, welcome everybody. Thank you very much, first of all, to Simon, Mark and Aaron for being here this evening to share their wisdom so that we can all become millionaires. You did promise that, didn't you? Just a quick, brief little introduction for those who don't know. So, Aaron Chatterley, Jersey-born, founder and deputy chairman of FeelUnique.com, Europe's largest online premium beauty retailer. He set that up in April 2005. Aaron's also an investor and partner in TechSmart Venture Partners, which is a venture capital firm that focuses on early stage consumer and technology businesses. He's also a non-executive director of Digital Jersey. Mark Proudfoot, in 1999 he founded and was chairman of Overclockers UK, which he built into a thriving business before selling it in 2012 to Case King. Mark had the idea to sell overclocked CPUs with guaranteed performance and stability, and also established the popular Overclockers UK forums, which are still there, I think. The company then went on to sell other high-performance hardware for gamers and other tech-savvy customers. He came to Jersey from Switzerland in 2014. Too cold over there, was that? And is now looking to invest in local startups or established tech and web businesses. And last but not least is Simon Perree, Jersey-born internet entrepreneur again, co-founded Play.com in 1998. I'm sure we all bought CDs from you at some point, before selling it to the Rakuten Group in 2011 for a reported 25 million. Simon went to Holia and is able to talk about online retail businesses. He's now co-founder of venture capital business Netcap Limited, investing in a wide range of retail businesses. So, without further ado, we've said who you are. So, toughest hurdle to overcome when starting a business is coming up with an idea that will work. Did you guys all have other businesses that you started and failed before you really hit the jackpot?
Right, is that right?
You've got a list of them.
Yeah, I literally did. I started off with a small market store in De Grishy's Arcade, built that up, sold that, started a retail shop on King Street, started another retail shop on King Street. So already had a fairly good retail background. Before then seeing the opportunity online and eventually selling shops and concentrating online.
So you've kind of learnt
literally at the bottom.
Slowly, yeah. Mark, what about you?
Yeah, I had lots of other businesses, but none of them were computer businesses. In fact, they were quite varied. I used to be a firearms dealer. I had a car alarm business, I had an office equipment business, I had quite a lot of different businesses, and they were all reasonably successful, not as successful as Overclockers, because I guess I was always searching for that big deal, and when a business came to the end of its life in terms of the possibilities of achieving that, it became less interesting, so I moved on to the next idea. And I think that if it wasn't Overclockers, it might have been something else. Who knows? But that's the story of how I ended up in Overclockers, just along the lines that you've just explained, Simon. Was I was actually a web designer at the time, and I became a web designer by buying a book called "Teach Yourself Web Design in 7 Days." And I bought this book and I taught myself to design websites in 7 days. I did them for a few friends, and a few friends quite liked the results, and one friend said, you might be able to make some money at that. So I had a go, I did. And when I had the idea of selling overclocked CPUs, I'd always been interested in computers, I'd always been a gamer, I'd always been quite techy, and I was an overclocker. It seemed to me just a fantastic idea that you could buy a processor A at a certain speed, do something to it to get it run twice as fast. That seemed like a win-win situation. No one had commercialised it before. So I found a local computer shop who I was buying some bits and pieces from. I made him a website and put a business plan together, and we started Overclockers together from that point.
Aaron, you had a few fingers in pies before or not?
I had one finger in a pie before that. I know my background was a little bit less entrepreneurial. I started as a programmer actually over here. Moved to London, and then I worked for a business called Cable and Wireless for 5 or 6 years in marketing, and spent a year in the Caribbean in '95 helping launch an ISP for Cable and Wireless. and then that was kind of in the early pioneering days of the internet, and came back here and spotted an opportunity in Oxford, and that was the only other business that I ran. Was I launched a web design company in Oxford, and we basically built sites for other people. And then I sold that in June 2000. And for anyone who has a kind of good understanding of internet history, that was about 6 weeks before the internet bubble burst. And then moved back to Jersey a couple of years later and decided to set something else up. But I didn't want to do anything agency side. And actually, we were inspired by the great work that Simon and Richard were doing at Play. And we sought out our own vertical and hit upon beauty, and launched Feel Unique in April 2015. No, 25.
2005, yeah.
Was it?
Last
There you
year.
go.
Yes, 2005.
Yeah.
Yes. Interesting, because you're a programmer, you taught yourself web design. Did you have any techie knowledge, or is tech knowledge important, or do you just hire it in?
My early background is computer science, technology, electronics, physics, maths, usual stuff. I did find in Jersey at the time, though, nothing really interested me. It was sort of work for the state of Jersey. Sorry if anyone does work for the state of Jersey. There wasn't as many options, I think, as there are now. So I went to work for a bank for a little bit, and it certainly wasn't my chosen career path. So it took me a few years to find out, really, to get back into what I was doing at school.
Is having a tech background important for starting a successful tech business, do you think?
I don't,
understanding
when I say I was a programmer, I was a programmer for about a year, and I was rubbish at it. I sucked at it. That's why I left and quit and went to London. So that had no bearing whatsoever on what I went on to do.
So you
later.
hired the talent in effectively to do what you did?
I'm middle of the road on this one. I think certainly with my business, it would have been impossible to start that business without having a serious amount of tech knowledge. But having said that, as soon as the ball started to roll, you have to buy in talent. There's just no chance you can do it all yourself. Although we probably did much more ourselves than a lot of our competitors. Do as much as you can, and then get the experts in for the bits you can't.
What was the single most important factor, do you think, if you're all thinking on your businesses and starting off, what do you kind of hold up as being the single most important factor that helped you succeed in that particular business? Is there one thing you could say, it was timing, it was something else?
Does luck count?
Back to talent again, yes, I probably should have said there before, but I was lucky that, when I was doing computer science at Holier, one of my really good friends went off and eventually did a doctorate in computer science. And actually, when it came to putting the team together, had my existing retail partner, I could go to really good friends that had their own career in the right fields. And again, it was putting together just a great team of people. Was just very lucky. Without having those contacts and network to put the team together would have been very tough.
Yeah.
I think two things. First thing is timing. If I think about my business, at the time when I started, I had a business partner who thought the internet was a fad, and he didn't really want us to even have a website. He just wanted us to advertise in computer magazines. I had different ideas, but I think the significant event in the UK was free internet access or free serve. That was fundamental for us. All of a sudden, everyone had a thirst, and they wanted to be on the internet and wanted to find out what was out there. And we were right there, not at the very beginning of the internet, but at the beginning of the free internet age. And I think the other thing that's equally important is determination. We often talk about determination as a quality that you have to have in business, but I think it's absolutely essential to be utterly determined no matter what comes your way. And if you're deterred by the obstacles that will come in anyone's way when they're starting a business, then it'll probably be quite tricky to succeed, I'd suggest.
Two things. One of them is quite similar to Mark's, which is the less important one for me, but I'll touch on it because of that. Hunger. For us, when we launched Feel Unique, we threw everything at it, and if it didn't work, we were going to have serious problems. And in terms of amount of money that we invested in it and the amount of time a whole bunch of reasons, but hunger is an amazing motivator, and I'm often asked, what are you going to do now? What are you going to do next? No, you've done Feel Unique, and that magic ingredient for me is kind of, I'm not as hungry now as I was back then. So for us, that hunger was the kind of the fuel for that drive that you need. For other people, that may be different, but the drive thing is really, really critical. And the other thing for Feel Unique especially was putting aside all the obvious stuff like product market fit and timing and all of those things. The other was focus. When we set out to start Feel Unique, our absolute goal was to create the kind of ASOS of beauty, if you like. And every single thing that we did, every decision that we took was based on, is it going to get us there? Is it going to get us there? And all we ever wanted to do was sell beauty products. And we had lots of opportunity to diversify along the way. We had an opportunity to sell. Somebody came to us with an idea that we could use our customer base and our reach to diversify into fashion, and we came quite close to doing a deal where we would have brought on 60 or 70 big fashion brands when we were already quite a big company at this point. We were turning over well in excess of £20 million at this point, and it would have been a massive injection to our turnover at that point, but it would have been a massive mistake and a massive diversion. And in the end, we decided, no, that this is what we do until such time as we own the space and own what we set out to do. And there were many other opportunities, jewellery and all sorts of other things where people want to capitalise on what we do. And for us, I think just having us and everybody who worked for us completely focused on this single objective and this kind of single market was one of the reasons that we were successful. Now, I know that other businesses will pivot and diversify, and that's all very well as long as you maintain that focus and aren't, distracted by diversification and other opportunities when the opportunity that you have right in front of you is actually probably the one that you should be focusing on.
Focus, basically. So going from the sort of things that made you successful, is there one thing or two things that you would not do looking back? I mean, there must be mistakes you made. What was the biggest mistakes you made as you set up?
I think as an entrepreneur then, I don't dwell on them, I suppose, actually. So definitely made lots of mistakes. Lots of categories went into that didn't work, failed, spent a lot of money on them. I think you just can't, for me, I can't dwell on them. So actually, I kind of don't consider any of the mistakes, because I think if you did, you'd worry about it. It would stop you innovating. So yeah, I can't say any because I've forgotten them all.
That's good. Good. Anybody else?
Yeah, I sort of agree with you, really. But I'm tempted to say having a business partner was a big mistake. But without my ex-business partner, I wouldn't have had the trade contacts to buy the product. So although he didn't bring anything personally to the deal, his existence gave me access to the means to buy stock. So no, I don't think I would do anything different, actually. No, I don't.
That's good.
I completely agree with Simon and Mark on this one. I always take the view that, there's no right and wrong, and you'll never know what was right and wrong, because if you had made a decision that you think something else may have happened, the kind of butterfly effect, and the whole thing could have come crashing, you never will know what the consequences of the actions that you didn't take would be. The only thing that I deeply regret is getting involved with private equity when it came to selling the business. And I would advise anyone when considering a deal with private equity to look at alternatives.
Yeah.
What pain did that bring?
A whole world of pain. And it still continues to bring me pain.
It does for me.
Having said that, if I could turn back the clock, I still probably would do the deal. But I would do it with eyes wide open. Is there anyone here from private equity?
So, stepping back then, because you're all now involved in investing in other people's business, you've been around the block a couple of times. What mistakes do you see? What are the most common mistakes you see other entrepreneurs making that actually means they don't reach success?
I think people still underestimate the amount of work and time this is going to consume. Is that whenever I see businesses fail, I'm not going to say almost all of them, but it's because people have underestimated that much commitment of your life that this is going to consume once you start to run with it. And I think where I've seen it really go wrong is people want a 9-to-5 job, and running a business is not 9 to 5. It is 7 days a week, 18 hours a day, and I've seen I always see the same thing, failure through actually just either not enough passion for the business, but not enough commitment. It's a full-time thing, and I think we've all done it. I think we've all worked the hours, and it took me, I suppose, 2 years. It's a sob story now, but no holidays, very little pay. It was really, really hard work, and I think if you don't, I guess we even have family partners that will support you in that. It's incredibly tough. So it really is, again, about focus, but again about just being realistic. Have you got the time to actually give to this business?
Any others?
Yeah, I would say perhaps not at the very beginning, but once you've formed your business, even if you've literally just formed it and you're not really bringing in any income, be careful about giving away equity too early. I see this so often with businesses, quite young businesses that have great ideas, and the founder of the business owns 25% of the shares because he gave 10% away to somebody who wanted to do a bit of admin work and 15% to someone else who help out on Saturdays. It's your business. Sure, if somebody comes along and wants to finance you, then you can talk about equity. But other than that, I would keep it all for yourself, unless of course you're in partnership with someone or 2 other people or 3 other people that bring something equal to the party. But protect your equity, because if your idea succeeds, you will regret that day, big time.
That's a question, just to interject, coming back to both of what you've said. Is it about finding people who add value to your business and deciding what you want to give to them to get them into the business, and when, rather than just handing over stuff as you go along?
Well, it's got to be about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But even then, even if somebody can add value to your business, do you really need to give them a slice of that business?
Okay.
I think if you've got a good idea and you're happy that you've got most of the skills involved to make that business work, at least in principle, I think your main objective should be to find a backer.
Right. Mike.
What do you think are the main mistakes other entrepreneurs have made?
I think some of the businesses that we look at, the things that we would watch out for is beyond the obvious of product market fit. Is there a market for what you're trying to sell, no matter how brilliant the idea it is? If nobody wants it, the obvious ones. Having sort of non-lopsided founder team is really important. Making sure that you have, however you have to bring those people in, making sure as an investor that the team that you're investing in isn't overly biased. It isn't just a tech team, because ultimately whatever you create, somebody's going to have to go out and sell it, and that requires a very different skill set, or market it. So it's important that the founder team has the broad range of skills to deliver the business beyond just a tech idea or whatever the original concept of the business was. So I think one thing that going back to the question, the mistake that people made is thinking that they can do it all on their own, and that's, especially when you're out looking for investment, it's something that people are going to be looking for. Has this team got the ability to execute on this venture? And that is probably more important than the idea. A great idea is nothing if you don't have the right people in place to execute, and that means having a balanced.
And one of the other things you've just touched on, of course, is funding. I don't know how you all funded your businesses, but is there any advice you'd give people out there now who might be part-time entrepreneurs, if they're having to pay the mortgage and do a day job at the same time? And is there any advice with regard to how you fund your business from your own experiences?
I think it is very, very tough. I was lucky; I built up capital gradually, and so that enabled me to fund the business myself. And actually, banks were a lot more friendly 15 years ago than they are now. It's really tough. I think you've really got to seek out mentors and start speaking. Get your network as big as you can, start speaking to people about your idea. Although you might feel very precious about ideas, and you really have to start speaking to people and people with experience. I suppose, and as an aside, I think there's a lot. I think now you can. The way the web works these days with web services, there's a lot you can do that used to cost us a fortune in overclocker service now that you can now do very, very cheaply. And I think it's finding now certainly the ways on the web that there's much better and more efficient ways to work than ever before. And I think seek those out.
I think that's really good advice. Yeah, widen your network as much as you can. There's, especially in Jersey, there is a whole network of people looking to deploy capital for good ideas. In terms of Feel Unique, we never did any kind of fundraising activity. We had a kind of traditional view on starting a business. The point of a business is to make money, so we did everything that we could to try and generate to become cash flow positive as early as possible. And I think all too often, especially for some of the investment decks that we see, that's become kind of like a sideshow, and it's nice to see opportunities where the founders at least have a very, very clear path to profitability, and never forget that actually that's what you're there for. You're there to make money. That's what a business is fundamentally. That's the whole point of it. So yeah, we didn't go through that whole fundraising exercise, and in a way, I'm glad that culture didn't really exist back then, because I suspect we would have ended up a lot worse off financially, having to go through all these rounds of constant dilution in exchange for cash that we probably could have got, but we actually didn't really need. So I guess the point being, don't over-raise just because that's what everyone else is doing. If you can create a profitable business, focus on that first, because you'll do better in the long run.
Yeah, well, on that note, that's exactly what we did. Profit is king. That was always a big focus for us. We didn't have any outside investment at all. When I started the business in '99, there was me and another business partner. We separated 2 years later, and I bought him out with the company's own funds. We never borrowed any money from the bank, ever. We literally grew organically, and we were able to do that by focusing on quite substantial profit margins when we could make them. Those profit margins didn't stay with us because the market changed, but when you're first to market with an idea, you can pretty much dictate your price, and that's what we did. So yeah, we grew the business organically. We didn't borrow a penny off anyone. We always had positive cash flow, positive balance. It was a perfect business financially.
You're talking about organic growth. There's people in the audience now who've got businesses already who might be sort of nervous about taking the next step or unsure about how to upscale their businesses. Is there any advice you all have for them?
Probably back to the mentor thing again, really. There isn't... experience counts for a lot, and if you can get the ear of someone that's done it, it's so valuable. I don't have any sort of secret sauce for scaling. I think if the market is right for your business, then certainly I think try and grow it as quickly as possible and get out there, dominate it, get some market share and concrete your position. But I think if you're nervous, I think still seek out the help that's around you, because as you say, there are the people in Jersey. There's some good people to speak to.
And it depends what your long-term objectives are. If your long-term objectives are to continue to pay the school fees and just to create a lifestyle business that generates enough income for you, and you don't want the headache and the risk of scaling, you don't have to do anything. Again, it goes back to this whole the culture of business has changed so much that historically it was there to provide an income, and now it's all about kind of everyone's seeking out these huge exits further down the line. And if that's what you're going for, then great. It's out there and it's certainly achievable. But whatever you're doing around scaling up should be around what's the ultimate goal here? Are we looking to build it and sell it? Are we looking to globalize? Are we looking to whatever it is? But it should be the pathway should be led by the goal rather than.
Yeah.
Sounds a bit profound, but
very profound.
You get what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I'd agree with Simon and Aaron on that, and on Aaron's point, I would also say just be very, very careful of your costs when you're growing, especially at the early stages. There's a whole bunch of people out there that would love to take money from you. You've really got to be sure that they're providing value for money, and you need to be quite tough on that score, I think. Unless, of course, it's very, very specialist skills that you're looking for, where it might be more difficult to get value. But it's very easy, whether you're growing organically or whether you're growing through investment, to waste money. Be shrewd.
You all invest in entrepreneurs and businesses. Is there some kind of magic ingredient you're looking for, something that really piques your interest?
Well, for me, it's about the person. So that individual, and again, I'm very similar to Aaron now. That really, the hunger's gone, and I want to see the hunger from someone. I want to see that they are going to give it 100%, and then I want to see the story behind the person. Where did this journey start? How did they get to this point? And I think that sort of combination, the idea is as important, but it's the individual or team that's really important, and they have to be able to demonstrate that they are going to commit, and this is going to be a very serious business.
Yeah, I completely agree on that. It's all about the ability of the team or the individual to execute on the deal, on the idea, and then I would add to that really what you're looking for on top of that is, are they actually trying to create a real business here, something that's going to ultimately make money in a reasonable time frame? Is it scalable? Because for us, what we're looking for is returns. So we're looking for businesses that really are scalable and have a clear pathway to high growth. And is it defensible? Can we create a moat around it? Is there some kind of IP or protection or something around this idea that means it's going to be very difficult for new entrants to market, or what are the barriers to entry for somebody trying to replicate what the business is?
Yeah, I think you both said it all. I couldn't agree more. The only thing I would add is the point that I made earlier. Businesses that have given away most of their equity are not really that interesting. I think that anyone that's had a great idea and is extremely passionate and extremely focused, but is lacking funds, but has a great idea, that's a gold mine, really. That's what we're all looking for. Guys that have got great ideas but only own 25% stake themselves.
That's the hunger thing as well, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's never going to be as appealing. So yeah, I think you've said it all, and I think especially IP. If you can protect IP, then which is becoming harder and harder, then that's very, very important.
Okay, now the digital landscape changes very rapidly, as too does political. Simon, you set up when we had the VAT. I mean, your business probably wouldn't have existed at all, would it?
It probably wouldn't. No.
I mean, be honest, the fulfilment
absolutely.
here. So, that you were able to use that, I'm not going to say loophole, because it wasn't a loophole, it was legal, to get your products out of Jersey. Are there anything that you three see on the horizon at the moment that you would say watch out for if you're about to set up a business, especially if it's a tech business? I mean, obviously we've got Brexit coming. Is that going to be an issue, do you think, or are you quite sort of chilled about that?
The people I speak to actually don't know, and this is a cop-out answer, but I think people, there's a lot of deals not getting done right now because people are just sitting on the fence. And I think it could just be too early to say with Brexit whether actually the UK could be a real powerhouse globally and surviving on its own, or could be kind of really sort of pushed out of Europe, and if we can't trade with Europe, we're in trouble. So yeah, sorry, I guess I don't know. In terms of, I still think London. There's a lot of good stuff happening in London. Certainly Jersey. There's still lots of good stuff happening here. I think sometimes, I guess if you've got the right idea, it should work anywhere at any time.
Do you say?
Business will still go on. People will still buy stuff the world will still continue to innovate. You know, the UK will, whether there's a pan-European opportunity or not, you know, it's up for debate, and who knows. But you know, there's still an enormous amount of innovation and opportunity within the UK, and it's not stopping us from making investments at this point in time. So I don't think that's an issue. And I think in terms of, is there some kind of event that we should be aware of at the moment? I'm not so sure. Since we started Feel Unique, and probably you guys as well, there's been a whole series of events that, you know, and events will always happen. We went through a huge recession in 2008, and you know, it's kind of one of those, like, should I have kids or not? Well, is it the right time? There's never a right time. It's just, you know,
Get on with it.
yeah. If it's right, it's right. I wouldn't worry about what might happen personally.
Yeah, I think if people aren't investing at the moment, there's opportunities. I'm very, very positive about Brexit. I think we'll look back on this time as a great decision. I think the notion that Britain, including Jersey, will somehow suffer in the future because we're not part of the European Union, I think is nuts. We still make things, they still make things, we still need to trade with each other. There's lots of other countries queuing up to do business with Britain already. And there's lots of other successful countries in the world that trade very well and are not part of some union of kinds like the European Union is. And I also think if you look at Britain's position in Europe, and if you take a good, cold, hard look at the main players in Europe, is Britain one of the stronger members or one of the weaker members? I think it's very clear that Britain's one of the stronger members. So actually, I think Europe needs to be persuading us that we should trade with them, not the other way around. So yeah, there's opportunity now because of caution of investment, and I see the future being brighter than ever.
Very positive. You know, one thorny issue, which we've kind of touched on already, is the team. You know, partners can fall out, staff hires can be disastrous. It can completely wreck any great idea. Any tips on that one, apart from not doing a 50-50 deal with your partner?
I was very lucky with my partner. We knew each other quite a long time before we started Feel Unique, so we kind of had a reasonable idea of what we were both like. Having said that, we shared an office for about 2 years and just shouted at each other for pretty much 2 years, and we didn't really get on until we got another office and he moved into that, and then it was completely harmonious for the rest of the period, and we still get on really, really well. But we had to literally move offices, and it was still fairly fiery at times. We once employed a financial controller who we thought was the bee's knees, and something wasn't right after about 6 months, and my business partner, who looked after kind of financial side of the business, decided to get rid of him at that point. Anyway, we got rid of him, and then a month later he was arrested for fraud and sent to jail for 4 years. And we did our diligence on this guy as well. So it is, you will make mistakes. You know, I think over the years we've employed north of 400 people. Obviously we've only got 250 at the moment, but over 400 people have gone through our doors, and you're going to make mistakes. You know, you just need to. I think you just need to be able to react quickly when you realise you know those mistakes. But nobody's going to get it right, and it's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, with partners, it's just a massive risk. It didn't work out with my partner. It doesn't work out with many other partners. It did work out with your co-director, but effectively partner. There's nothing more to add, really. That's up to you to decide. As far as staff is concerned, again, a massive risk, but a risk that you've just got to take. If I think back to some of the nightmares that we had, I had one guy who worked in our returns department who was processing faulty motherboards and processors, etc. Instead of sending the replacement items out to the customers, actually had his own eBay shop set up, and he was using our business to ship the goods to his eBay customers. We had another chap who worked in the returns department, ex-university, super chap, so pleasant, very conscientious, always wanted to stay behind late at night, until we found out he'd put something like, I think, £75,000 of customer refunds onto his own credit cards. I mean, it's crazy just thinking about it, because it was all traceable. Theft was a major issue. When at one time processors about this big were £700-800, a tray of them would be 10-20 grand. We had a lot of stock go missing, so we employed full-time security guards. Then the full-time security guards got paid off, and we were losing even more stock. So staff is just a nightmare. I always said, if I ever go back into business again, I'll sell one product a year to one customer, and I'll be happy.
Anything you want to add, Simon?
Well, I had the opposite. I had 20 years and ongoing of a great business partner. But yeah, for me, it was a really great thing to have someone. It was a team effort rather than, and it just felt really good to have someone to bounce ideas off. We both complemented each other, and it was great camaraderie, great sense of humour. Actually, made every day very funny. Having just someone alongside you to laugh at some of the crazy stuff that happens. So no, just the opposite. Completely enjoyable. I would have been tough to do it by myself. I think it would have been it would have been a lonely place. Actually doing it, someone else was really good fun.
Can I just add one thing to that? I completely with Simon. Although I joke about the partner that I had, I couldn't have done it without a business partner, because we complementary skills. You know, we always joke that without Richard, the business would have gone bust within 6 months, and without me, he never would have had the balls to go out and start it. And for a lot of the stuff that we invest in, we are looking for a partnership, really, because I know it doesn't always work, but when you're a founder especially of a startup, it is a lonely place, you know, and a lot of the decisions that you're making are potentially life-changing, and potentially, you know, could mean the end of your business. And having somebody to bounce that off who has a slightly different perspective, even just to sense check a lot of the decisions that you're making, can be really valuable. And if you look at some of the bigger, most successful businesses, very often they're started. There's one or two that you could point a finger at, but very often started by two individuals.
Okay, before we open up to the floor, final 3 top tips from each of you to anybody who's thinking about starting up a business. What would you say were the 3 things that you would hammer home the most?
Again, I'm going to go back to that hard work thing. It is really hard work, so make sure whatever you're doing you're really passionate about, because it won't be fun if not, and it will fail, I think, if you're not very passionate about not making money, but about the product, about actually what is this thing going to do? Is it going to change something? What's the end result? For me, it was more about disrupting and changing than really making money. That was a good score, but actually the fun was really creating something. I guess the word focus, again, I can't reiterate again what these guys have already said, that I've seen so many companies, especially tech companies, sort of focus on the new shiny, and all of a sudden we're going to go this way, and actually not finish anything because they're distracted by something else. And again, the same with play. We didn't diversify categories for about 8 years. We stuck to single categories, did them really well. We did diversify it later on, but we made sure we did those 2 categories, DVD, CDs, really very well. So focus is, I just see it all the time, we've decided we're going to do this now. And like, all right, you were on the right track with the last one. Fine, I'm kind of stuck. I think we've said it all, sort of cash flow, cash is king. Yeah, don't try not to run out of cash.
Yeah, perhaps. Mark, what's your suggestion?
Yeah, I mean, we've mentioned quite a few things. I mentioned determination. I think determination or focus, we could use the terms interchangeably. Stay focused and stay determined no matter what comes your way. I think I would also say try and put yourself in your customer's shoes at all times. I always had a saying that said, think like a customer. If you don't think like your customer, then it's not going to work. You've got to think about what they want and what they want to see. And I think if you provide that, you will succeed. And I think the final one is a little bit of a cliche, but yeah, be the best. Aspire to be the best in your field. Don't be second best. Be the best.
Everything those guys have said, and probably dozens more. I would pick on the kind of best-in-class customer service issue. Look at Amazon. Everything is about absolutely providing the best possible service to the customer. I would say product market fit. No matter how brilliant you think your idea is, do your research before you spend a penny on it, and make sure that other people agree with you. Make sure that there actually is a market for your idea. Focus, obviously, I've talked about to death. And the last one is enjoyment. For me, I can honestly say, hand on heart, Sunday nights, I was looking forward to going back to work on Monday morning. Genuinely looking forward to it, because I absolutely loved it. I stole my joke.
Sorry.
Even before I had twins, genuinely. And I always said that the moment this stops being enjoyable is the moment that we get out of it. And that's pretty much kind of where we got to. Honestly, and that kind of comes back to the drive and the hunger and the focus. All of that's really achievable if you're doing something you really love.
Okay, you asked 1,000 questions. Who wants to go first?
Scaling a business from Jersey. What's your thoughts on that? Very small market, 100,000 people, mostly known as a finance centre. I'm just interested in what your thoughts are on scaling a larger business from.
We had to scale off island. Yeah, we kept a core here. We unfortunately did outgrow the island, and so yeah, we did have to scale elsewhere. So we did have teams in Cambridge and India. They were much bigger than the Jersey teams, and there is no, because I guess there is a point if you're going to keep scaling, you can't. There's a finite amount of workforce here, so eventually I think you have to go off island. But we still kept the core team here. But yeah, I think either outsourcing or we insourced onshore. It was very simple. It worked very well.
If you think of businesses like Healthspan and Holland Barrett, one was a high street retailer before it became an online retailer, and the other was online before it became physical on the high street. Can you think of any examples where a good idea was started up at those levels, where they've been on the high street and online from the get-go?
I can't remember the name of it, but there's a beauty business started by the founder of ASOS and a few other people who started kind of doing, it's something called Blow actually, doing kind of blow dries and some beauty products and services online as well as selling offline. Feel Unique, we kind of went through that in a way in order to sell the products that we sell online, especially in beauty, because you have a thing called selective distribution, which means you can't sell luxury beauty brands online unless you own stores. So we kind of always had this kind of multi-channel.
From the very beginning?
From the point of inflection, absolutely, because
When you got the big brands.
well, we couldn't get the big brands until we got the bricks and mortar. So we kind of trucked along selling grey market product, and then at the moment when we kind of realised we needed to go onto the high street as well, then we kind of hit that inflection. I think there's, I think that there are so many examples of businesses that are multi-channel now, and it is almost becoming the norm. Amazon are opening stores in the US. I think successful retailers have to look at all channels to market, not just online.
Anybody else?
When did you give up your day job to focus full-time in business?
Mine was just a really easy transition, as I alluded to. Yeah, 'cause I was already in retail, so it was pretty easy. And I was lucky; I had some office space above a shop I had, and it was pretty easy to actually flip between the two. So I never really had. I've been working for myself since I was 18. So yeah, I never really had that horrible. And at 18, I really. Yeah, it was certainly salad days, but it was you can't, you know, you don't need I suppose the income. You can survive quite well. So I didn't have that point. I think that must face, I'm sure, a lot of entrepreneurs that do have want to do something, have a mortgage, have responsibilities. I was fortunate to sort of get all that done early.
I had a mortgage and responsibilities when I started my first business, and a really good job that was paying a hell of a lot more than when I launched the business. So I went from a paid career with Cable and Wireless to launching my own kind of web design company. And I had a wife and a mortgage and stuff to worry about. But I think after kind of several months of research and belief in the market and belief that the opportunity was real, you kind of get to the point where you've convinced yourself that it's going to work, and then took the leap. The rest is history.
Yeah, I was working for myself, so there was just a short transition. In fact, it was very short. It was about 3 or 4 weeks, because the rate that the business grew in its early stages was just phenomenal. I remember, I think it was something like 6 or 9 months after we started trading, we got so many orders to ship that I went into the tech department, the sales department, the admin department, told them all to unplug the phones and go into the warehouse and start packing. We had over 4,000 orders to get out. And, we had to do it quickly. So yeah, it was like that. So it wasn't really an issue.
My question kind of follows on from the last one in a way. You were talking about the need to put in kind of almost supreme amount of effort at the start to make sure things take off. How do you actually reconcile that though with families and partners who kind of probably don't appreciate the fact that you're not really available for medium to long periods of time?
I think the answer to that one is that you just have to do it, or you don't put the effort in, and maybe your business doesn't take off. I don't know about the other guys. I certainly lost broken relationships when my business started because the level of commitment is totally and utterly unreasonable.
I think it depends on your family. Depends. Only you know how they'd react and what the challenges are with the individuals. If you've got a very easygoing family who are very supportive, it's probably a lot easier to get done than my girlfriend at the time. There isn't anymore.
I'm the same, and they're very supportive. Then fiance, now wife, that understood my dream, understood that I was going to have to work really hard to get this done. So I guess it was in the open. I guess we talked about this was going to. We knew that was going to be the path that I was going to take, and it was all established.
Just get them to buy into the dream. Get them, get them to. Yeah, well, they're getting it anyway.
Not too much though.
With the Feel Unique and Play, the .com became very much inside in your case, Aaron, and very much part of the brand. I'm not sure if you considered the .co.uk as part of Overclockers or if it was just Overclockers.
Well, yeah, no, it's an interesting question, because prior to overclockers.co.uk, there was and still is an overclockers.com, and that was a nice springboard for us, because overclockers.com actually wasn't a retail business at all. It was just a hardware news site, forums, and everybody who was overclocking went to overclockers.com. So when I was searching through the list of available domain names and saw overclockers.co.uk available for something like 18 quid, I thought I'll buy that.
Well, my question is how important do you think it is to ring fence the domain extensions beyond just the .com?
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah. I mean, buy them all, buy everyone that you can. But whether it's that important for the operation of your business, yeah. I mean, there's the key ones, isn't there? There's so many these days, but certainly .com, .co.uk, Jersey.j, Guernsey.gg. I think they're all quite important. .com does it all. If you can get .com, great, but harder and harder to find these days.
Any other questions?
Yeah. Just pop up. Thanks for all the content, guys. Really. Question for Aaron, when we go back to diversification and your decision not to, Can you just elaborate on that? Did you think you were going to be too thin if you went to fashion, or what was the reason behind that?
We went a long way. In fact, we got to the point of having contracts drawn up, and I remember we were actually in Bohemia with the potential partner, about to sign, literally. And we'd done an awful lot of work, and it was a huge opportunity. This person was bringing 50 or 60 major brands to the party. They were going to join us as director of fashion. Like we were going to legitimately have supply of brands like Ralph Lauren, Boss, a whole bunch of brands. And I was always nervous about it, partly because of the personality involved with the individual, but also because I just felt we hadn't yet. Simon, when they started to diversify, their business was substantially bigger than us, and I just didn't feel that we had enough strength and depth in the skills that we had and the resources that we had to start to divert people, like online marketing teams, from focusing on beauty terms to focusing on fashion, and I just got really, really nervous about it. And there were 4 shareholders at the time, and literally just before this meeting, I just pulled my heart out. So I was really not comfortable with this, and we backed out at the time. So does that answer your question?
Yeah. Did the returns factor have a bearing on it?
No, because the margins were really high. Our returns, Fairly Neat's returns, are something like under 0.5%, because people buying what we sell pretty much know what they're getting. Mm. It's mostly a replenishment business, apart from fragrances, but then.
But more for the size.
Whereas fashion, it's more like 40%.
Yeah.
But
the sizes used and things.
Sizing, even with sizing, you could buy a shirt from somebody you often buy shirts from, and it just won't fit quite right, regardless of whether it's the right size or not. So there's a whole bunch of things with fashion, but the margins are high, and it is sustainable. Look at ASOS and Net-a-Porter's returns are kind of about 45%, and they deliver it by DHL and take it away by DHL if you don't like it. So massive margins. So it financially, we could have made good money out of it, but it just. And I'm like I say, I don't regret any decisions that we made, but I'm really confident that we made the right decision. We just didn't own our market, and I didn't really want to diversify until we owned what we did.
Okay, brilliant, thank you.
Any other questions?
You were also saying about the need to avoid giving away equity at the start unless you really had to. But then on the other hand, you were saying if people had cash, it was sometimes difficult to find where to place the money. How do those two things kind of match up?
Sorry, what was the second point?
Okay.
People had.
You were saying that in some cases investors struggle to find really inspiring businesses to invest money in. How do the two things match up? I mean, do the investors with cash always want equity, or do you always hang on to the equity, or how do you balance?
They're always going to want equity.
Okay.
I have a slightly different view to Mark on this. Although I agree with him, you shouldn't give away equity where it's not necessary. But I also believe that it's better to own 10% of a £100 million business than 100% of a £1 business. At some point, you're going to have to take an assessment on, is what I'm going to give away going to increase the value of what I'm left with?
I think I'd agree with you, but I think I'm saying you're probably better placed to make that decision as the business is developed. At the very early stages, it can be quite dangerous.
Yeah, and the only thing I'd add to that, although I'm kind of flippant about giving away equity, every single quarter, 0.1% that we would give away in deals that we did along the way, I wish we'd been a bit tougher when we're negotiating. You'll get 2% in exchange for this. I wish we'd gone, no, we want 2. You'll get 1.9% or 1.75%, because at the time it seems like irrelevant. But further down the line, those tiny little percentages are really, really costly.
Once it's gone, it's gone.
So push as hard, squeeze as hard as you can. And the chances are the other guy's going to go, what's the difference between 1.75 and 2%? Fine, do it. But make sure that he's the one that regrets that deal, not you.
But yeah, as venture capitalists, we all want as much of your business as we can get. So you're going to have to reconcile that, but we're going to go for the max.
So at least you're consistently inconsistent.
Yeah. I think that's what we're more about, and I think we've all done it now, giving away percentages to colleagues, and I did the same thing. Someone can have 5%, oh, someone's brother can have 5%, he knows what he's, and actually gave away a ton of equity that actually when you came to sell, actually we were the same thing, thousandths of 1% were worth lots and lots of money. And actually, but 10 years before, it was, we were whole numbers, 2%, no, not 2's too little, let's make 5. And it does really change as the business grows.
Hopefully.
Yes.
From an entrepreneurial point of view, in terms of running your own businesses, and from an investor point of view, what's your view of non-executive directors and chairman, as in the non-executive role, bringing that into your business?
I think if you find someone, again, that will complement your business, maybe it worked well for us. We were looking at an IPO, so we brought in a non-exec that had years of experience of IPOing businesses. And it was brilliant just to have someone on our board that could steer us through this grooming process as we were looking to float. And actually it was invaluable, and he bought into the business. So it was great to have someone that would buy into the business, sit on the board. Actually, again, was a great mentor for us, a really well-known UK businessman that came onto our board, and it was invaluable. Great mentor to have. Stops making a lot of costly mistakes. So I think they add value.
Do you sit on the board as a non-executive company that you invest in?
Generally, yes, is my preferred route. Yeah, but not always. But generally, yes.
I completely agree with him.
Yep, I'd agree.
Well done.
In a nutshell. Any other questions? Would you guys mind staying and having a drink and so people can
Not
chat
at all.
to you? Is that good? Okay,
That's
well,
good.
Thank you
Fine.
very much, all three of you. I really appreciate all the information. Thank you. And the next business breakfast on the 4th of October is about staffing.